think European Union is wonderful. We all love Europe, love the countries in Europe. But European Union has been absolutely brutal on trade. Canada has been very bad to us on trade, but now Canada is going to have to start paying up. And Canada's been tough on the military because they have a very low military cost. They think we're going to, protect them with our military, which is unfair. So Canada is going to be a very interesting situation because, we just don't need their product. And yet they survive off the fact that we do 95% of what they do. And Canada is just absolutely, I say it, and sometimes people smile and sometimes they say great idea, but Canada, their taxes would come down greatly, their security would go up greatly. Amazing things happen to Canada, and really Canada in this particular, why would we pay $200 billion a year in subsidies to Canada when they're not a state? You do that for a state, but you don't do that for somebody else's country. So I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state.
Mr. President, how long is the negotiation ongoing with Canada? There was obviously a delay in implementing those tariffs.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens. But it just sets up so good for them. Look, the people would pay much less tax than they're paying right now. They'd have perfect military protection. They don't have any military protection because and you take a look at what's going on out there. You have Russian ships, you have China ships, you have Chinese ships, you have a lot of ships out there, and people are in danger. This is a different world today. It's a different world. They need our protection, yes.
You mentioned Elon Musk and the efforts that he's undertaking with your authority. You granted him new authority this week. Will he secure any new government contracts while he is working on Doge?
No, not if there's a conflict. If there's no conflict, I guess what difference does it make? But we won't let him do anything having to do with the conflict.
Are you personally checking to make sure there's no conflicts of interest?
Yeah, I am.
He answers to you.
Sure, he does. First of all, he wouldn't do it, and second of all, we're not going to let him do anything with as a conflict of interest.
Mr. President, your negotiations with the EU there's discussions ongoing already. How quickly do you expect that you'll hear back from them about any of these other measures?
I can't tell you. Yeah. The EU's been very nasty. It's just been, they haven't treated us properly. Look, we were great to them on NATO. Essentially, it's a similar group of countries. When I came in, my first term, I raised their fees. I mean, they were not paying. We were paying for, in my opinion, almost all of NATO. And now, I had the bad moment with the press where the press said, well, does this mean you won't protect them? And I said, I won't protect them if they're not paying. But because I said that, the Secretary General, as you know, said it was the greatest thing he's ever seen because the money came pouring in. But they don't treat us right on trade. They don't treat us right on the military either. I mean, if you look at Ukraine, we're in for probably $200 billion more than Europe. Why are we in for more than Europe? We're in for more than Europe. I mean, think of it, or NATO. I mean, let's call it NATO because Canada's in. By the way, Canada is just about the lowest payer. Also, they shouldn't be. They are just about the lowest payer in NATO, in addition to everything else. So Canada's really been taken advantage of. And if they had to pay just something modestly fair, they wouldn't be able to succeed as a country. And that's why I feel they have to become a state. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is it your expectation that partners will offer major concessions and that you actually don't end up applying those tariffs?
No, I think that a lot of them will stay the same, and whatever they pay, I'll pay. I mean, we'll have a lot of them stay the same. I think some. Look, I heard as an example, EU lowered their tax on cars down to the exact same amount that they were much higher. They were approximately 5 times higher, and they lowered them down to the exact tax that we're charging. That took place like yesterday or the day before. Is that a correct statement? I think so, yeah.
Do you expect any exemptions or waivers?
I don't expect that, no. This is a simple system. I mean, there wouldn't be any. And in the case of Apple, I gave them a waiver, an exemption in my first term because Samsung was in South Korea. And Samsung didn't have to pay the tax because it was a tax on China. And Apple makes a lot of their product in China. So I did that because it wouldn't have been fair. But now this applies to everybody across the board. This is a much simpler way of doing it, much better way.
You had that major call yesterday with President Putin of Russia. President Zelensky responded today basically saying any agreements they won't accept unless they're made with Ukraine. Will Ukraine have a seat at that table for those negotiations?
Of course they would. I mean, they're part of it. We would have Ukraine, we would have Russia, and we'll have other people involved too. A lot of people, a lot of forks in the. A lot of forks in this game. I'll tell you what, this is a very interesting situation, but the Ukraine war has to end. The young people are being killed at levels that nobody's seen since World War II, and it's a ridiculous war, and it has to end. We had a good talk with President Putin. I had a good talk with President Zelensky, very good talk. And somebody said, oh, I should have called Zelensky first. I don't think so. I mean, we have to find out whether or not Russia wants to make a deal. I know that Zelensky wants to make a deal because he told me that. But I now know that Russia wants to make a deal.